takes 10 seconds to call. So, before we get going tonight, a couple of things. When they built this room in whatever year it was really a cool room, but it has terrible acoustics. If, for example, if I stand here, I would be able to hear everybody in the room, but if I'm standing here, I can't. And so it's just really, really not good acoustics. So we would like you, when you speak, if you would come to the center here, give us your name, your address, and speak clearly, and if you can, speak slowly so that we can hear what you're saying. And if we interrupt you, it's only because we want to make sure that we do hear you. So, a couple of ground rules. You have a maximum of 15 minutes to make your case. If there's lawyers in the room, maybe 20, but otherwise 15, because they have a hard time making their points. So, I do note that I remember being in this room one time when there was a big discussion about a store called Canadian Tire, and there was more people in here. We were all lined up around there, and it was an interesting evening. We don't want anyone to leave here tonight and go home and say, I didn't have my 2 cents worth. I never got to speak. I didn't say what I wanted to say. So everybody's going to have a chance to do that. I'm sure all our PVRs are set to record wherever we need to record, and so we're going to be good to go here. Alan Gibb is going to join us via telephone. He's in British Columbia, and then we will. So we'll get started right about 6 o'clock. I'm going to make a brief opening comment about. Andrew's here now. I'm going to make a brief opening comment about why we're here, and a few words about where we are, and then we'll get things started. So, any questions before we go? Good stuff.
I have one question.
Sure.
The results of the meeting, is there a possibility of getting the minutes of the meeting?
Oh yeah, we keep minutes of every meeting, and they're going to be recorded. They'll be online.
Okay, yeah. Could they be like in hard copy also?
Sure. We have copies of minutes of every meeting. Absolutely.
Okay. And how would they be available?
We will get them. You can come and ask for them, and we'll give them to you. I'm not sure when they'll be ready.
Next week.
Pardon me?
Not till at least next week.
Next week.
To get all of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Oh, are we good to go, Brian? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. The purpose of the hearing is to hear any representation from the public with regards to a special service levy proposal bylaw number 4569 to establish a rate for police protection services as a special service within the town of The Pas for the years of 2018 to 2021 inclusive. I want to start this evening by letting you know we have heard your concerns. We have heard them loud and we have heard them clear to the point that this council, in all likelihood, is not voting in favor of proceeding with this bylaw as it's been presented. It's clear the concept of utilizing special service levies is new to our community, and generally speaking, we have more questions than we have answers. This was not properly presented to you by way of information. We could have laid it out there cleaner, and as head of council, I will take responsibility for that. You need to know that the idea of service levies has been talked about within this council many, many times over the past 3.5 years, and while it made perfectly good sense to all of us, for you, it was completely foreign. Councils previous to this one, in my humble opinion, didn't give you the entire picture. When budgets were struck each year, they included funding for a variety of projects in both recreation and infrastructure, even though the money was collected each year to fund either partially or entirely the project for whatever reason didn't proceed. So funds allocated were then kept and rolled into the next budget year, calling it a nominal surplus. Property taxes would only increase when assessments dictated. In 2010, for example, almost all property taxes went up, substantially some of them, due to reassessments by the province. Negotiations would take place between the town and its unionized workforce, agreeing to, among other things, wage increases. The cost of fuel went up. As you all know, the cost of everything goes up and rarely comes down. Because of this concept, spending money we really don't have, our community came to a dead stop. We haven't seen any significant improvement since the renovations of the Roy H. Johnson Arena or the construction of the Wellness Centre. This council has taken huge steps to trim the fat, if you will, and deliver budgets that are based more on probable fact than maybes. Over the years, reserve funds have shrunk, and we need to do something about that. The massive amount of change in our community in 2016 with the demise of Tolko Industries, who told us on the day they announced they were closing, also told us not to spend any time looking for new ownership because none existed, resulted in positive, well thought out and constructed plans to move forward. This council looked at a number of scenarios all the way from losing those 340 direct jobs, an additional 2,000 indirect jobs, and taking that $40 million payroll with it, to what new ownership could be found. This opened up our eyes, and everybody searched hard for any dollars that could be found and used more efficiently. Not just mayor and council, but senior managers and employees. At the end of the day, council determined that we need to do something about our policing costs. They are way out of whack compared to almost every other community in this country. We needed to develop a method by which we could take this completely uncontrollable cost out of the general budget and move it into a special levy. It is still very much the intent of this council to move forward with a special levy for policing costs, but not in this fashion. We need to take our time to find a rate that would be both fair and equitable to an entire community. We have a number of vacant lots with absolutely no sign of possible construction. We have derelict buildings that give us no indication anyone is prepared to do anything about that. These are the ones I feel should carry the heavy weight on this levy. I don't want to be responsible for forcing those on fixed, limited, lower incomes to give up their home because they no longer can afford it. There's not a person on this council that would want that to happen to anyone. Our major employers have told us they require people, and those people require housing, and there is none to be had. It is the very reason why we sold off all our surplus residential lots for $1,000. We need housing, and we need to grow, and we need to broaden our tax base. Clearly, we also want and need to hear from you, and that's why we're here tonight. I believe we have more than enough votes that I can say with confidence the bylaw we're talking about tonight, bylaw number 4569, is no longer relevant. I will now open the floor for presentations and remind you to keep your comments as brief as possible. There's a lot of people here tonight. We want to hear from anyone who wants to speak to us. If your point has been made by another person, then maybe you won't need to speak, or at least be brief. Having said that, I want to make sure that all of us in this room tonight will not go home with not having been given the opportunity to say what they want. And with that, I will then open the floor. Go on.
Is there a list of presenters we had to register in advance, I thought, too?
I'm sorry?
Is there a list of presenters? I thought we had to register in advance.
No. No.
That's why I jumped up first.
Yeah, how many people here do plan on speaking tonight? Okay, so not that many, so we'll be fine. Okay. Number one.
My name is Vaughn Wood-Alias. I'm chairman of the board of the Kelsey School Division, and the board of trustees have directed me.
Yeah, it's this beautiful room. Well, there's no speakers connected to that. That's connected to the sound system. You just have to speak loudly and slowly.
I will use my teacher voice. Just be quiet in the back. As a representative of the Board of Trustees of the Kelsey School Division, I've been directed to point out a couple of things that have caused us some concern about the proposed bylaw 4569. In that it caused us significant uncertainty as we were preparing our own budget for the next school year, which had to be done by March 12th. We decided that we couldn't speculate that this bylaw would pass, so we completed our budget process, which began last fall, and set our budget so that the town of The Pas and the RMF Kelsey could receive on time the special levy costs that they would be required to pay. We have budgeted in the past and will continue to budget in the future for local improvement taxes. However, the addition of a subsequent tax under this bylaw proposal via the special service levy we felt is unjustifiable because it circumvents the exemption normally granted to school properties under the Municipal Act, which has governed assessment between the school division and the town since the school division was founded in 1959. As you know, most of the education costs of Kelsey School Division are covered by the provincial government under Manitoba Education. And Manitoba Education does not provide specific funding for local taxation. We've paid local improvement taxes assigned to the schools and the school properties that aren't schools. We budgeted for those and pay them, but if this bylaw passes, it's anticipated that this new special service levy would come with a significant overall increase to the Kelsey School Division property tax bill. So, since we are not for-profit organization, and since the government really dictates most of the revenue that we get, if we get a significant increase in our tax bill, where do we get the money from? Well, as many people know, we do have some taxing authority ourselves. And that estimate from our perspective, it could go up as high as a 2% increase in the education special levy to accommodate the town's special service levy. For the last 2 years, this year and next year, and in fact for 5 out of the last 8 years, we have not increased the special levy for education costs at all. In reflection of the division's low assessed tax base, we know what the town situation is, and we've taken great care over the last couple of years, recognizing the financial constraints of the community and the town specifically, to maintain zero growth in the education special levy. And we take great pride in knowing that we're one of the most efficient school divisions in the province, with only one area of slight excess, and that's in the care of special needs students. If this passes, it would result in double taxation to the local taxpayer, as it would fall twice upon the PAW ratepayers to pay for the same policing service if we use our special levy to garner that extra tax. And we would have no other option but to use the education special levy to pay for the town's extra collection of taxes. And ironically, to do that, it would also fall on the RM of Kelsey, because it's within the boundary of the Kelsey School Division. It's within our catchment area. So if we have to raise our special levy, it falls on them as much as it falls on the town. In fact, it probably falls on them more, because over the last 2 years, their share that the government allocates to them of the special levy is higher because their tax base is better than the one in the PAW. It's our formal position that no taxation by one level of government should be imposed upon another level of government. Raising education taxes to pay the special services levy contemplated by the town, we feel would be a misuse of taxation revenues that were raised or can be raised to support education in our community. So our position is that the town should continue to exempt the public school properties, and that's the school building areas, not all the other properties. We pay tax on that. Our position is you should continue to exempt the school buildings from its proposed increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, sorry, before we head off, Don, does anybody have any questions? Okay, sorry. Hi, Val.
Hello. Val Miron. I live at 556 Bigville, and I put a lot of effort into objections to this proposed special service levy. I'm trying to do this in point form for seniors, many on fixed pensions. All costs increase: hydro, phone, water, house insurance, groceries, gas, etc. Now the town wants to add to these increased costs. This would be financially crippling to these people. And there's a significant risk that these properties could go into tax sale. So where do these people go? If they have to sell their homes, what would they get for them? Small house, probably needs repairs, some half lots, and now high taxes. How many would be forced to leave their homes and possibly move out of town? Low-income families, many have mortgages with their property taxes included in these payments. These families would be in the same situation as seniors on fixed pension, except town council won't see them in tax sale, as their homes would be subject to mortgage sale. Average homeowners live in modest to average single-family dwellings. These people include retired and working families with modest to average homes. What spendings would they have to cut to pay these additional costs? A rough estimate I've got is over 60% of the single-family properties are under $170,000 in full assessed value. This is a significant number of properties that will be negatively affected by this proposed levy. Council has said that this is a fair distribution of costs, that everyone can dial 911. What about people who live in apartments? The per parcel rate will greatly decrease the owner's overall taxes, but each person in these buildings can dial 911. How many times will RCMP have to respond to a single-family residence in comparison to high traffic volume industrial or commercial properties? And these are only two examples showing that it is not a fair method. Industrial, commercial, retail, restaurants, hotels, apartment buildings would all benefit with reduced taxes. However, they also have the ability to increase revenues if their costs increase. Homeowners living in low to average assessed homes do not have that ability. People who are who own single-family rental properties cannot increase their tenants' rent to cover the increased taxes. Otherwise exempt properties, there would be an increased cost in the town's financial plan, with town-owned exempt properties being charged the $900 parcel rate. Rough calculation that I did, I just took your assessment rolls, and this is not anywhere to 100%, so it's my rough guess. I'm guessing 270 properties in the town owned by the town of the Pas. At $900 parcel rate, that equals $243,000 plus whatever that special mill rate would be. These increased costs would be going to taxpayers of the town of Pas. As Vaughan Wedelius advised, Kelsey School Division is also exempt. Their increased costs would be borne by taxpayers of town of the Pas. Church-owned properties, currently exempt, would be subject to the parcel and special mill rate. There was an article in the Opasco Times on February the 14th. It was titled, "Religious Communities Remain an Integral Part of a Healthy Society," and it is worth reading. I gave a copy of that to Jen, so if you are interested in that. Churches are struggling to keep their doors open, experiencing the same rising costs as homeowners. These same homeowners who attend church donate to support their churches. Churches provide important services to the greater community, not only a place to worship, but provide a place for community groups to meet, like Cubs, Brownies, Scouts. They all use church halls, and a place where community events are held. Other people are here to provide more information on the role of churches in the community and the hardships that would take place if this new tax method was implemented. The current method is portioned assessment, and that is higher taxes to higher assessed homes. Far from perfect method, we all know that, but it's better than this proposed parcel rate and special mill rate as far as people's ability to pay goes. The hardest hit people are those with the lowest assessments, who generally have the lowest incomes, as ability to pay is what portioned assessment is all about. Higher assessments will still be paying a higher rate, even with the police costs charged out in this parcel method. So generally speaking, people with higher assessments have higher incomes and can afford to purchase or build these homes and have the financial resources to the corresponding taxes. What is at risk What is their risk of going into tax sale? I'm not singling out people who are in the high income bracket. This is just a fact relating to the ability to pay. In closing, I oppose the Town of the Pas Special Service Bylaw number 4569, and I also oppose any per parcel rate plan. You are transferring more money to have to be paid by lower income people as compared to higher. It's not good in any form. It creates a hardship for those low-income single-family owners, and this can potentially cause people to have to leave the PAW. Not because they want to, but they can't afford it. Thanks.
If I may, Val, just only because you've done so much research, and I very much appreciate it. It's your calling card. So I'm wondering if you've also given any thought to what might be more fair, what might be more equitable, what might be more equal.
We need growth, and we're landlocked. I worked for the Town of the Pas. I know the scenario. I know that our assessments have been basically the same for 25 years. I don't have the answer. We need industry. We need a gold mine or an oil well or I don't know what, but we need that industry to generate growth. We don't have that. I don't have the answer. But changing it to a parcel rate to end up where low-income people owning homes can't afford them anymore, where do they go? They leave the PAW. They can't afford to live here. That's not helping any kind of economic growth in the town when you're shrinking your population.
Yeah.
But the answer to how we grow the PAW, we need industry, we need business. I don't know how to get it. Cost of transportation in the north is high. Who wants to come and build a big factory here when to transport their goods is just not feasible, and cost of construction is high? There's a lot of scenarios. I don't have that answer,
okay.
But this is not it.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. I am the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Graham. I am an employee of the Diocese of Brandon of the Anglican Church of Canada and the rector of Christ Church, the PAW. The Synod of the Diocese of Brandon opposes the taxation of its exempt properties as proposed in the Town of the PAW bylaw number 4569. It is noteworthy that the first enumerated fundamental freedom in Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms is the freedom of religion, found in Section 2A. That does not make it more important than those that follow, but its placement does indicate that the drafters of the Charter had it top of mind when they began the iteration of the rights of Canadians. Similarly, the advancement of religion is one of the 4 common law heads of charity that have been recognized by government and the courts for more than 500 years. Simply to be a community of belief, in our case a church, is in and of itself a charitable purpose. Those who belong to a worshiping community those who belong to a worshiping community need to do nothing more than exist. We are not suggesting that the Town Council of the PAW is deliberately trying to abrogate the local Anglican community's freedom of religion. However, the imposition of municipal taxation through a special services levy on otherwise exempt property may do that, and may ultimately result in the closing of the church. Christ Church is particularly important historically, both for the Anglican Church in Canada and the PAW. Henry Budd was the first Indigenous person to be ordained to the Anglican ministry in North America, and the founder of the Devon Mission, which eventually became Christ Church, the PAW. As a result, Christ Church has historical designation. Another of the diocesan properties in the PAW is used for the Henry Budd College, which is active in educating and training local Indigenous leaders. In this crucial time of truth and reconciliation, the Anglican community in the PAW is central to the work of both the Diocese of Brandon and the National Church. This special services levy threatens the existence of the local congregation and, as a result, the important work of the church. The Anglican Diocese of Brandon and the parish of Christ Church, which is part of the diocese, owned 4 parcels of land in the PAW. We have filed the same objection for all, but have filed each separately. For your ease of reference, they are Lot 16, Plan 648. The registered owner is the Church of England Parish of Christ Church at the PAW in Manitoba. I also have the roll number, the class, tax status, exempt. Lot 18, Plan 648, also I have title number. This is the cemetery. Tax status is exempt. Lot 17, Plan 648, the rectory. Tax status, taxable. Lot 9, Block 15, Plan 587, Henry Budd College. Tax status exemptable, taxable in part and institutional in part. Christ Church Cemetery and Rectory. The church and cemetery are fully exempt properties under the Municipal Assessment Act. Henry Budd College is partially exempt, although we think that as it now exists, it should be fully exempt. And the rectory is not exempt. There are 4 parcels of land because the church and cemetery are assessed together. There will be 3 special levies and 3 assessments. The increase in taxes for the church, rectory, and cemetery will fall on the shoulders of the same group of people, the congregation of Christ Church, the PAW. Based on the information we have received from the town office and from the proposal itself, we have calculated that the increase in taxes payable by the congregation will be $2,122.57 in 2018. The percentage increase is more than 2,100% in the first year alone. Over the proposed life of this bylaw, the increase will be well in excess of $8,500. To our churchgoers, that's $2,122.57 is a huge sum. We note that it is only 0.08% of the estimated cost of the police services for 2018. To our diocese, that $2,122.57 is a significant sum. We are a diocese supported by the National Church primarily to ensure that Northern and Indigenous congregations continue to be able to worship. Henry Budd College. The Henry Budd College is unique in Canada. Its mission is to serve Northern Anglicans seeking ordination. By providing this education locally, the college serves those who could not otherwise get the education they seek. The overwhelming majority of the students are Cree speaking. The proposed levy will result in an increase of $1,048 due to inclusion of the exempt portion of the property. While this will probably not result in the college closing, it will have a negative impact on the programming and classes the college is able to offer, which is an impact on the education of the students. This bylaw proposes a levy for the next 4 years, 2018 to 2021, with the estimated cost of police services rising each year. We anticipate that will mean an increase in the levy for every year, which will increase the burden to our parishioners, both for their own homes and for the church properties, unless there is an offsetting development in the new accessible properties, which would be able to carry the increased tax load. Since it is likely that the town will continue to require police services beyond 2021, we expect the town will seek a future set of levies. We are exempt. We are an exempt property under the Municipal Assessment Act, but are well aware the Municipal Act allows the town to tax exempt properties for local improvements and special services. Special services does include police and fire services. However, we submit that the inclusion of these services within an itemized list of what are essentially capital projects means the legislator did not intend that exempt properties be taxed for ordinary police and fire services. Those should be included within the usual mill rate. We ask you to remember that as a church, we have the best product possible, the promise of salvation through belief in Jesus Christ. But we also give away freely to anyone who walks in the door. We don't charge for admission. We don't ask our people to pay an annual fee. We don't tax them. We are always thankful that our parishioners choose to give us money to continue this work. However, we must also remember that the same people who give us money to keep the church open are also being asked to pay these additional taxes on their own homes. As a result, we will be asking them to give more out of less. Unlike a local business that can charge more for its goods or services, a local landlord who can raise the rents on his properties, we can't do that. Ask yourself what happens if the congregation of Christ Church, the PAW, is unable to continue because of these property taxes. This won't be the first church in the diocese to close its doors, but doing so would not relieve the tax burden. Ultimately, this could mean a fire sale of historic property that is particularly important to the PAW. It would probably mean the cemetery would need to be turned over to the municipality. The loss to the community would be great, and the expense to the town would increase. Churches don't serve only the people inside them. We know that people who give to religious institutions are more likely to give to other organizations. The people who attend church are often the volunteers at the local soup kitchen or food bank. The existence of churches provides a unique stability within a community. Without a place to meet, the individual's faith persists, but the effect on the community may not. I would conclude with a thought about the difference between equity and equality. Charging every parcel the same amount on the levy is, on its face, equal. But it does not, in fact, account for the varying ability for members of the community to pay its levy. It would be, therefore, unjust to impose this levy equally when not all members of the community have the capacity to pay it equally, and this includes the church. It is also our contention that the imposition of this levy on otherwise exempt properties is an unfair and inappropriate application of the law. Police services are not special services under the Act, and we contend that this plan is misguided and will have far-reaching and negative impacts upon the community. In summary, our position is that this bylaw should not be passed as drafted, both for the reasons we have given and for reasons of justice. In the alternative, should council persist, we ask that the exempt properties remain exempt so that we may continue our work in the community. Signed by the Right Reverend William G. Cliff, 7th Bishop of Brandon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Linda.
We didn't have a bishop, but I am representing the church. And I'm not going to go over a lot of the things that Rebecca just did because they apply to Westminster as well. But I just want to make reference to the fact that the United Church is changing drastically and will be, we pay into a national church that is changing. The same people who live in the town of the PAW go to the church and pay for a facility that already is half closed. If you walked into Westminster on a Sunday morning, we will be preaching in the CE wing. We do not open that big church because we cannot pay the heat in the winter. So we are already in that kind of thing. But underneath that little place that we do have operating, there's a daycare, we have Cubs, and we have Scouts, and we have all those kinds of services providing opportunity here for the PAW. So our concern is that we are an exempt property. We need to be that way because we can't pay anymore. That's a huge structure on the main street. If it closes, there's very few people who are keeping it going at this point in time, and I would probably say that they're in the 70s plus category. Younger people are not there. And although we do provide services for younger people when the need arises, because churches are operating in a different way in this day and age. So we're just really wanting to, I have a letter here from our board chair that basically just asks that we agree that things have to be done. I've been a politician myself, so I know that difficult decisions have to be made. We just ask that we are exempt. We have no way of raising money, as Rebecca said. We don't charge people to come in through our doors, and if people need to have any kind of services provided, we just offer it because that's what a church is there to do. But we do ask for consideration that an exempt, we don't want that building to close any faster than it's going to likely do. We have a 5-year vision at this point in time, and we have to look to the community to say what's going to happen to a big structure like that for the future that provides a service to the PAW. When you think about alternatives and how you're going to be able to pay the dollars and everything like this, my suggestion is maybe we annex Clearwater Lake and Rocky Lake, where everybody's moving to, leaving just us old people in a community to pay for all of these kind of things. That's just an offhanded kind of a comment, but we have great big houses out there that are not of benefit to the town, and it's been a challenge for the school division ever since I was a part of that. And so I hear the concern. It has to be met somehow or another, but please, it cannot be on the backs of the churches because they are not viable organizations in the sense of a business. That's not what they're there for. So I heard your comments, Jim, and I thank you very much for them. But when you're deliberating this, because I know that the solutions have to be found somehow, you will consider that we need to be still exempt.
I know some people at Rocky Lake would probably think that's a bad idea.
Yeah, oh, I know.
Well, Grant?
Hello, my name is Grant Buchanan, living at 64 William Street, and like the previous speaker, Jim, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate your comments at the beginning. However, I think it's important to be on the record opposing. And also, I appreciate your comments about the acoustics. Not much has changed since I sat over there a few years ago, many years ago. The airflow is terrible. However, I want to thank Council for providing folks with this opportunity to exercise a very important right, and that's a foundation of our democracy. It's the one that everybody has the right to speak. So my wife Linda and I, we're opposed to the Special Service Bylaw number 4569, and we're opposed despite the fact that we personally would see a small net decrease in our taxes. Clearly, the higher the assessment, the larger the net tax decrease. The converse is true. That is, the lower the assessment, the larger the net tax increase. And we're opposed for 5 main reasons. 1, it fails to represent the best interests of all citizens, which is your elected duty to ensure. 2, it fails to represent the principle that all ratepayers should pay their fair share, which is your elected duty to ensure. As Mr. Harvey noted in a recent article, fair is not the same as equal. 3, it negatively impacts folks on low and or fixed incomes. 4, it negatively impacts exempt properties, and you've heard representation on behalf of 2 churches. And 5, it runs the risk of promoting out-migration of current ratepayers to other municipalities. The public notice given last month does not provide enough time for proper public discussion and understanding to occur. You folks had, what, 2 years or so to mull this around at your meetings? And you gave the general public 6 weeks to try to come to grips with what you struggled with for at least 2 years. Today's meeting, and I know it's not deliberate on your behalf, but it's during spring break. Lots of folks are away. So what was the big rush? What I would suggest, what Linda and I urge, you probably already have seen this, is that you defer for at least a year. And in the meantime, schedule a series of public consultation meetings to explain the impact on all ratepayers, invite questions, gauge feedback, see what can be done. Then, if there's a clear consensus of how you can go forward, at least you can come back with a bylaw knowing that you've got the confidence and support of a large group of people who will be paying the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Ken Gerba, 12 Hill Place. I'll be brief and I'll be loud. I'm voicing my opposition to the bylaw or the levy. I feel that the town council should not mess with the assessment version. It is the gold standard for taxation. It's a national standard. I don't think picking a specific chunk out of the overall budget, 25%, pulling it out, and then making it so that it's less expensive for people in the higher end income homes and more expensive for the people on the low end and the elderly. I don't feel that this is a very fair method of doing the assessments. I think a more appropriate, and I know you guys always want to hear different ways of doing it, I think a more fair version is that if the policing costs have risen by $150,000 in a year and you have 1,500 rolls across the entire town, that comes up to $100 a roll. If the math is out, you can correct it, but I mean, that would be a more equal version that everybody's taxes go up $100 rather than 80% of the people have their taxes go up by $900 as suggested. And again, like you said, you're going to be voting for this, but please make this one of your election platforms this October. You let us know how you're going to continue with that. Because if it comes out that we pull out the policing this year and then we pull out maintenance next year, it's going to end up being a very unfair version of taxation.
I appreciate your solution too, by the way. It's nice to come with solutions. Oh, Brad?
How's it going?
Good.
Name's Brad Bodner. I live 624 Cathedral Avenue. Nice thing about this, what I've heard so far, and you guys can have no problems hearing me, I'm very loud. Val, Vaughn, Ken, they've all basically been saying, I think, what we're all thinking. I like Ken's last suggestion too. If you're gonna raise or do something like this, my biggest concern is, even for myself, just buying a house, how do I prepare for my mortgage? I have to put X number of dollars away every month. If you're gonna make an increase, give us advance notice. That way I can make that assessment so myself, when I have to go make my mortgage payments, I can put X number of dollars away every month. I understand the position you guys are in. I've been there. I've sat where you guys have sat, as some of these people have. It's a thankless job. It is. It's a lot of work for very little money. That's the whole point about contributing to the community. I think in some ways it'd be good if everybody does this. In terms of suggestions, I've just given you one. Give us forewarning before you're going to do something. The burden that's being placed, I completely agree with everything that's been said before me. This idea of equal and fair, no, not the same thing. If, you know, I don't think it's in my interests, and everybody's thinking about their own interests as well, but it's not in my interest to be supporting other people that have more expensive homes than I got. I have to live within my means, as they do. It's also not in my interest to support corporate interests. So the agreement that you guys have with the new mill is something that has to be renegotiated. When I was sitting on council, or even prior to when I was sitting on council, they got a huge tax break, okay? They left anyways. There's no guarantee in this world about anything that anybody's gonna stick around. So everybody has to pay their fair share on that end of it. They have an ability that the average person here does not have to generate revenue. So, yeah, I'm just gonna make this very quick. That's the only other suggestion I would make to you guys. The policing costs are way too beyond anything that they should be. We all know this. You could go to the FCM, you could bring the motion forward. You know, this is something that's gonna go back to the federal government. Something else that maybe the law of the public is not aware of here, even if you try to reduce policing costs, you can't. If you say we're gonna pull 4 police officers out of the detachment, your rent goes up. They actually pay more. These are the details I feel that the public needs to hear about, that they never hear about. Hardest part about being on council is, the reality is, you got very little say. Provincial government's controlling you, federal government's controlling you. I get it. So it's the one thing about me, I'm not gonna shoot the messenger in this. The economy's gonna be bad. We don't know what Trump's gonna do tomorrow, but there's another issue there. How about Morris, Manitoba? He goes, he makes a decision. You got a bunch of people immigrating in. Their policing costs went right through the roof. It was my understanding that the Prime Minister had to intervene. Well, same thing. If we've got a community here where people are flooding here because they have no work in northern communities, policing costs are going up, another suggestion I got to make is, what is your guys' agreement with OCN and the RM? Are they paying their share of policing costs? If that's what we're really talking about, is policing. I have to question whether that's really what this is about. I think it's a question of generating revenue to make sure the roads are repaired, water's leaking out. I don't need to tell anybody here, Hydro wants an 8% increase for the next 6 years every year. Water rates are going up. My wages are frozen. Didn't matter what our collective agreement was, the government froze that. And the people that are working at the mill have already taken a wage cut. So I think we've all bitten the bullet to some degree on this already. So to me, yes, I have to completely agree. I think Val covered it very well in terms of what is fair, and I think Ken's solution's better too. You gotta do an incremental, you know, and make it so everybody's paying the same amount. I'm not here to subsidize people that are living beyond their means or corporate interests. Thank you very much.
Thank you. By the way, I find the job very rewarding, not thankless, just so you're aware.
I did too, but.
Bob Uckman, 887 Treboden. I will be one of them that will be paying more. Having said that, though, I agree with the concept. But when I read the proposed bylaw here, I'm a little bit uncertain on this, but it appears to me that a family living in a 24 apartment block, for example, will not be paying what I'm paying. If that's the case, then I have to disagree with the proposal. The concept, yeah, like the concept I agree with. The idea, well, the form of taxation based on this ability to pay may well have been valid in terms of the house being the measure of a person's worth. That was probably quite valid in 1930, 50 maybe. Hasn't been valid for a long time. I would suggest that I'm better off financially than many people living in a $300,000-400,000 house in this town, who are barely making it from pay to pay, and yet the taxes are based on the value of his house. So I've always disagreed with that. But can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. With the apartment block as the example, would a family living in an apartment block being paid, would they be paying equivalent to what I'm paying?
No.
No. And for that part, I have to disagree with the current proposal.
As I do.
Yeah.
Anybody want to comment?
Yeah.
Just, the $900 figure is per parcel. It's not about how many people live on the property. It's about the parcel and the taxpayer, the tax roll related to it. So, in answer to your question, no, we don't go per family. It's per parcel.
Yeah. I understand from this that apartment block, for example, may well be paying, as we all are, another fee based on assessment value to make up for the shortage of revenue, something like that?
Yeah.
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 But what you're saying, though, they still would not be paying equivalent maybe to what I'm paying.
No.
If I may, it goes back to the issue of if it's equal, every parcel of property in town pays the same amount.
Yeah.
Now, when you put into the mix, and this has been an issue that's been coming forward, is when you include people with the property, then that's where the question of fairness comes into play, and this is a question council's going to have to confront and deal with going forward.
Well, I'll just make it short. Like, I agree with the concept,
Yeah.
but I can't agree with the proposal if it does not mean equal payment by a family there and an equal family here. Okay?
Good,
Thanks.
thank you.
Ivan Young, 70 Geimer. Question before I start. It's to do with grants in lieu of taxes. Manitoba Housing receives a grant in lieu of taxes, and that grant is based on the assessed value of their property. Now, is their property one parcel, or is it many parcels?
I think it's one parcel.
There's many parcels.
Oh, is there many? Okay. I thought it was one. But there's apparently many parcels.
But there may be many apartments on one parcel.
But one parcel, like on Cathedral, that could be one parcel, which is probably 100 units.
Yeah.
Okay, I made a presentation, I've handed in, but I'll just read part of it. I'm here to speak against the special bylaw number 4569. The fact I'm speaking against this bylaw does not mean I'm opposed to the concept of a flat tax for policing costs. I'm speaking against it because it's not fair. If this proposed bylaw is to have all people in the PAW share the policing cost in an equal manner, it fails. Why should Councillor Gibbs' 36 apartment block be treated the same as my single family dwelling? Why should Evans Premichuk's 3 large apartment blocks behind my house be treated as the same as my single family dwelling? Why should Morris's 4-plex across the street be treated the same as my single family dwelling? Why should Manitoba Housing's duplex across the fence from my property be treated the same as my single family dwelling? There's multiple people living in this. There's more police calls to those places. So in my opinion, the town's rushing this bylaw and trying to pass it before the next election. So please rework it before and bring it back right.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
My name is Tina Ross. I live at 948 Gordon. I have a rental problem, property at 258 Crosley, which is a family-owned home. I'm wondering, we need the police regardless, but I'm looking at the usage, like who uses it? Whoever uses it the most, if I can say that, should be part of the supplier of money to keep it going. Not very often you would call the police, but when you do, you're glad they're there. But a lot of times we don't, because we don't have a need to. As far as the rental home, if the taxes should go up, the rent should be increased. You should not have to bear the burden of absorbing the tax increase yourself. Of course, it has to be passed on to the renter. You have to notify them 6 months for a rent increase, and even then, it's only a small portion. And a lot of times, those rental people have trouble meeting the rent that they do have. I agree wholeheartedly with the presenters before me. They have some very good points. And like I say, the PA is a multicultural town, and we get multicultural problems with it. But those multicultural problems should have support from people behind them. And we should not have to be the receiving end of people that are kicked out of other places, and usually they're not good people. I guess that's all I have to say, but...
Just if I want to make sure I heard you correctly, because you did say something different than all the others. You suggested perhaps a fee-for-service, that if you're using it more than others, then whatever that commodity is, let's not just say policing, but whatever that commodity is, if you're using it more often, you should pay more often.
Exactly. It'd be like a user fee.
Okay, good.
And
I just want to make sure I understood what you were talking about.
Okay, and to me, that would be fair.
Okay.
Not the ordinary person that doesn't use that service very often.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.